And now let's hear Balaji in terms of the overall in across the country. What are you hearing? What are the trends that you are seeing? What's going to happen to the businesses? And more importantly, how does it impact the leadership? Balaji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Papia. I think you and Meenakshi have actually set the stage for so much to be. You've given such wonderful insights on a personal, professional leadership and organization level. The job becomes easy. I saw a few questions from the wonderful delegates who've been sending very insightful questions and edging the conversation forward. And I remember the conversation you and I and Gaurav and others had. And he said, touch a little bit on the macro picture before you get down to specifics on leadership challenges. So I guess a couple of things that I'll start to talk about global India. I won't take too long. I'll try to be brief. But fundamentally, I think we all know that this pandemic is actually a societal crisis, right? It frankly is threatening lives, livelihoods, and the well-being of our global community in a manner that has not been felt since 1918. Obviously, it is being further, should I say, threatened by geopolitical tensions. And whether it's nations or whether it's leaders, they are trying to recast the economic power equations. Okay, so whether it's global trade, whether it's supply chains, whether it's the race to find vaccines, whether it's for securing medical supplies for their citizens, I think in one hand, collaboration is also happening. At the same time, there are fault lines as well. So I'm being very candid about it because you guys read it. You are very enlightened leaders, all of you as panelists and delegates. So it is there for everybody to see. There are collaborations on the face of it, but there are huge fault lines. And so now that was, a little bit hidden when the lockdown was going on. But as the restart to the economy started, on one hand, the government has to deal with disease progression, which is what they are trying to manage. Because for them, it's saying, okay, let me just handle this because this is going to be the most supercritical thing for us. And in order to let the rest of it to be taken care by the industry, because industry, if you believe in, should I say, compassionate capitalism, and that's a conversation that is a topic by itself. But if you believe in that philosophy, then you say, okay, that the industry will take care of the rest. So all government is saying, let me take care of the health and the progression and so on and the vulnerable people. And the bulk of the thing has to be then driven by the industry. Therefore, the role of industry world over has become extremely important, and their responsibility has gone up, and their need to have some kind of a moral compass and a moral responsibility has become that much higher. And so if you look at country by country, the strategies are evolving from national to regional or local, lockdowns. And those are just short bursts, then trying to make sure that, some amount of normalcy comes in. Now, clearly what it's meant is that certain sectors have, been impacted more than the others. To say that nobody's impacted is wrong. Relative impact has been different, but everybody has been impacted, because even those that you say typically, oh, pharma industry, great, look at the stock markets, and that is an indication of how they're going, or the FMCG. But frankly, they've taken a tremendous amount of hit when it comes to supply constraints. And you guys in the health industry definitely know it. And I speak to a lot of colleagues in other sectors. So now that's one dimension. And the second dimension on a global platform is the fact that the movement to offline and online has happened in a manner never thought possible before. And so if you look at the Indian situation, India, again, from a health point of view, the 2 million mark was a massive number, right? So suddenly, from nowhere, we've become number 3 after US and Brazil. And yesterday's headline or today's headline was about the highest in a month with 60-odd thousand or a week or whatever, just for the day. Sorry, I'm losing track of time. It's a day. 60,000 plus in a day is a big number. Touch wood, mortality levels are low for whatever reason. You guys are the experts. I'm just kind of being a narrator in terms of what I see. And clearly, the gradual but definitive unlock that has started has started to have, at least on the livelihoods part, a positive spin-off. The opportunity for India with the geopolitical tensions to be an alternative to China is there. Will we get there or not? Again, a different topic altogether. But we do at least see the government trying its best by putting a stake on the ground, talking about the 4 L's of labor, land, liquidity, and laws, right? So they are kind of doing the thing they got to do. There are some signs of recovery in industrial activities. If you look at the PMI index, that's gone up. If you look at freight movement, e-way bills, if those are any indicators, then that's great. UPI transactions going up seems to indicate a positive trend. If you look at the services, they were less impacted than merchandise. And the slow recovery, even if it's for imports and exports, is a positive trend. Are there concerns? Surely there are. I mean, imagine in just a matter of 2 months, we've actually reached the full year 55% fiscal deficit target. That's a big thing, right? But then, as Papia said, and so did Meenakshi, there are no playbooks. So what? All right, so 55% in 2 months, you should be panicking. But frankly, no, because lives and livelihoods need to be sorted out. And unless you can tackle the here and now with no playbook, you don't address the longer term in any case, because there is no long term if you don't take care of the short term. So those are issues that we, I guess, are seeing one dimension. And the second, of course, is the contraction demand. I think, Papia, the way you said, expenses are less. But on a broader basis, it does also mean that consumer sentiment is muted. Okay, let's face it. Whether it's your organization or mine, we had a huge spurt in demand, but we earned less as organizations. So the revenue pie is shrinking. So all of these, in a way, I would say, are opportunities and threats for India, if I look at from a macro point of view. The good news is the government is listening. The good news is industries, by and large, are behaving in a responsible manner. The engagement and dialogue between industry and the government has been very positive. We've had horror stories. Okay, we had people who were, risking their lives in order to be there to maintain essential services as telecoms. We had people that were beaten black and blue, whether they were our employees or distributed employees, did not matter. But we had to basically then reach out to state governments and the law enforcement agencies to ensure that there was a system put in place so that people could do what they were supposed to do, to keep networks up and running and not beaten up because they were just flouting a curfew on movement, right? So those issues are behind. Now the hard work really starts of kickstarting the economy. Now, I think that's from an overall macro point of view. I'll just touch upon a few things that I believe are important for us as leaders to keep in mind, which was the second part of your question, Papia. He said impact on industry and companies. The fact is every industry is impacted one way or the other by the external environment. Yeah. But the fact is that there will be winners. And unfortunately, there'll also be people that will be less successful than the winners because the winners are going to differentiate themselves from other players by doing a few things, some of which has been extremely critically touched upon by Meenakshi as well as by Papia. But I'll just divide it into 2 parts. I've explained the macro and therefore what can be the business response. And I'll come to the cultural aspects, which I don't think I can do better than the ladies, but I'll just try to capture a few things that I thought works well. So one is, from a business point of view, whether we like it or not, all leaders and the leadership team needs to take an extremely integrated perspective on the health and medical progression, on the government responses, on societal reactions. You have to be knowing what the societal reactions are. And at the same time, understanding the implications of all of these to your business or your sector. Very, very critical. Number 2, you have to start to prepare your organization to have greater systemic resilience, to absorb shocks, to absorb stress, and still recover critical functionality and thrive in these altered circumstances. Because this is not a sprint that we thought it would be initially going in. It is a marathon. In a marathon, it's extremely important to build that kind of a systemic resilience to absorb stress, but at the same time kind of recover the critical functionality. That's really what you could do. Third, I think referred earlier by both the panelists and the moderator, is the need for putting customer at the center of what we do, and therefore the need for developing extremely advanced analytic capability, because the data movement is going to be now high frequency, literally, changing dramatically day by day. And therefore, for us to shift demand, to sense demand shifts or consumer sentiments becomes extremely important. Fourth, it is extremely critical to have an omni-channel capability for businesses, no matter what industry they are in. And therefore, at the same time, they need to invest in personalization and digital sales and marketing. That is an absolute given, because 18 months is almost a lifetime for most sectors, and that's what's going to happen. And another point which to me is important is about using the power of data and technology to develop potential scenarios. And these scenarios have to take into account shifts in demand and structural shifts. Are some behaviors that we took for granted for decades going to change in a matter of quarters? If that's going to be there, how will we react? We don't know whether it'll play out or not. But if you don't start to think about those scenarios and plan for it, I don't think there's any, you would be always struggling from one problem to another. And the last piece is to make sure that you use the opportunity to reskill existing workforce and also at the same time hire for the future. I mean, that is extremely critical. If you didn't do that, you've lost an opportunity. I've just put 5 or 6 of these points because as leaders in various organizations, you will realize that these are extremely important things as leaders or leadership team that you need to have in order to, come ahead and bring your organization ahead in the changing, in the new normal, so to say. Now, on the people side, so articulated well was the societal purpose or the social continuum, which binds organizations and teams to a goal that is larger than ourselves. Clearly, super critical. The need for leaders to convey a compelling narrative. Frankly, even the people listening to you understand you don't have the solutions. You don't have all the answers. Yeah, but they're looking for that beacon of hope, saying, you know what, this guy's honest. The guy's at least telling us what we can do for the next week, for the next 2 weeks, and the month after, and so on. They just need to see that authenticity come through in saying, guys, this is a long haul. Let's not get overworked. Let's not get overstressed. Let's deal with it day by day, week by week, and month by month. And then we'll see how we land on the other side. And all the things that I spoke about, resilience and shock and all that stuff, are things that you do in a leadership team in smaller groups. So you can discuss those broader issues and only make sure that you prepare the organization to make that direction and make that shift, right? So while you inspire teams in these unpredictable times, it is extremely important to make sure that you have to understand that as you build for the future, you get the timing right. Because you've got to pace yourself and the organization for that change. And therefore, the inspiration that you provide to your team, the motivation that you give for the larger purpose, the engagement you do with them helps you to co-create the future organization. I guarantee you, each and every one of your employees and your teams will come back and tell you how it can be a better tomorrow. They'll tell you how the workplace can be made safer, how you can drive efficiencies. They'll come back and tell you what they want, right? And so if you think organizational design has to be the purview of leaders, yes, to a certain extent, but not necessarily. Open it out to your employees. You'll see the ideas coming from them. Make sure that you have serious debate and discussion around it and figure out what works best for your organization and for your future needs, right? And so it's not the same solution for a call center worker or a data scientist. You might just assume that call center worker, acha yaar, productivity is yogi, and now he's not going and, indulging in coffee shop banter and so on. Oh, this data scientist now, he's got all the time in the world. He just needs his computer to work on. The fact is, he or she is a human being too, and they need that social engagement. So even if you choose to do the extreme, like I heard TCS say 95, maybe the thing of saying 95% of my workforce will work from home in 2025 was a broader vision. They'll probably cut back to 70, 75, and it's guaranteed that even those 95% of people, they will find ways for them to engage, meet socially, even if it's in small teams and neighborhoods, because if they did not do it, the essence of what organizations are, the essence of what human beings are, will be lost forever. And that's not going to happen. whether we like it or don't like it, it's going to happen for sure. One last point that I will say, which is critical from a leadership point of view, is that, or maybe two. One is, as I said, when you prepare for the future, you realize that your organization is now unfrozen forever. Yeah. Now, culture defeats strategy every time is an old saying, right? Therefore, you can either end up having the unfrozen organization freeze exactly the same way that it was before we went into lockdown, or say, no, there's an opportunity for us now to, refreeze it in a manner which is more appropriate for the future. That's number one, which is a way to kind of, deliver huge value for all stakeholders, your customers, your employees, yourself, your shareholders, and everybody else. And the last part is, for God's sake, give some time to yourself. I love the way Papia said I could connect with my superpower, or, or about the cooking passion, or what Meenakshi said, it can also lead to other stresses saying, God, I can't cook for nuts. Yeah, that's okay. But whichever way you look at it, you are not superhuman as much as you think you are. In the end, you will feel days that you're absolutely pooped. Take the half a day, go to sleep. Don't worry about, having, missed an important Zoom call, or not responding in 20 minutes if that's the norm that you set for yourself. Right? So pace yourself for the marathon. Take care of your own mental and physical wellness, because when you are good, the world around you looks good. So with that, I just like to hand it back to Papia yourself.
Thanks, Balaji. Thank you so much. And what I really liked in terms of a theme. While we are saying that there is no playbook, but I think for each one of us there is an interpretation of the context, interpretation of the organization that we are in, and it is on us that how are we going to turn it around, right? While there are lots of questions of what organizations are going to do, but I think there is a lot on us, right, that we can. And one of the pieces which is standing is also about learning agility, learning to be useful in this digital era, learning to be able to reskill ourselves, learning to be adjust to what we call a new normal, or using Balaji your term of saying that now it is unfrozen. How do I want to freeze? And if I don't want to freeze, then what the new form will look like, right? So I think it is a beautiful opportunity for us to do our self-discovery, and learning agility again, comes in my mind is going to play a very, very critical role. So thanks for your insights, Balaji. I learned a lot. And I look forward to continuing the conversations over there, in some form.